Nothing exceptional was done by someone normal. It's not normal and exceptional are two exclusive circles. They don't intersect. So if you want to do something exceptional in this world, you can't be normal. And if you're doing what normal people do, you will never excel above the norm. And so that concept or that understanding has always led me to revel in my strangeness, my weirdness, my uniqueness, and value those parts of me more than anything else. So that's the one side. I think similar to you and what you were saying is that if you're going to do something big, special, out of the norm, you can't be normal. So that's a good thing.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back this week to another amazing, very, very exciting episode of the Superhuman Life. As always, before we jump into today's conversation, guys, I'm your host, Frank Rich, and let me just remind you and let you know how incredibly grateful and thankful we are to have you here with us today. I just want to take a moment before getting into introducing today's guest. And guys, I just want to thank you for everything that you've done, for supporting this show. I truly am living the most amazing life. I truly believe that. And I'm not saying that as a way to brag about anything that I'm doing, because I don't really think that I'm important at all. I think that I have a mission that I'm trying to serve in this world. And I'm so grateful that I have people around me and men supporting me in this mission. But when I talk about my life, guys, today I have somebody that's becoming a very close and dear friend of mine. I got an opportunity to hear him speak a few weeks back at the event that I was at in Nashville. And right out of the gate, when he walked on stage, I could feel his presence, I could feel his energy, and I just connected with him. And after his talk, I got the opportunity to spend some minutes with him, just talking about life, his book, what he's doing, what he's creating in this world. And from the first moment, I truly felt connected, like a level of kindred spirits with today's guest and this individual. And the conversation today just reaffirmed all of those thoughts and feelings I had about this man and why I met him at the time that I did. So you're going to get so much out of today's conversation. You're going to see a lot more of this individual in the work that we're doing here. But we have today one of the world's leading experts on leadership, none other than former Navy SEAL officer Larry Yatch. Larry Yatch is an elite leadership strategist and the creator of the SEAL Success Programs, a collection of skill-based trainings, workshops, and courses that enable high performers to find fulfillment, connect with their teams, and make sustainable impact in their field. Now, Larry is a graduate of the US Naval Academy and former 10-year officer in the Navy SEALs. He spent nearly a decade since his retirement as a trainer and speaker, helping senior executives optimize their personal growth and leadership strategies for superior performance. In addition to numerous military honors, Larry is recognized as the go-to expert in leadership development, team performance, and project management. Like we said, he was a 10-year veteran, literally leading some of the most elite teams and organizations into some of the most dangerous environments in the world. And we share a couple of those stories here with you. But in this conversation, I wanted to unpack a little bit about what makes Larry tick, what made him want to become a SEAL. So we talk about those early years of leading him up into the SEALs. We then unpack BUDS and how everybody is a SEAL going into the BUDS. And this kind of flipped it upside down on my head when we actually think about what SEAL training is designed to do. And then we really unpack his book a lot and why his book is the proven model and why the previous model has been flipped upside down on its head. We talk about the need for self-regulation. We talk about the need for developing self-confidence. We talk about a little bit about spirituality, which is actually something we're going to bring Larry back on to kind of get his insights on trauma, spirituality, and finding and seeking God. So amazing conversation. We're actually going to have Larry's business partner on the show here in a couple of weeks. So make sure to stick around for Annie's episode. That's going to be coming up here very soon. But in today's conversation, guys, it's all about leadership. It's all about being elite, becoming the best, leading teams, whether you're leading teams in an organization, whether you're leading teams on the field, or whether you're leading teams in your home. Leadership does not delineate or differentiate. Every single one of us is a leader, is a manager, and a follower. We need to understand these roles. So let's get into today's conversation with none other than Larry Yatch on how leadership actually works. Love you guys. We'll see you on the other side. Larry, my brother, good to see you. Welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Like I was telling, before we got started, man, I just felt so connected, almost like kindred spirit, meeting you in Nashville, and your talk that you delivered at the event was, in my opinion, the absolute best. And I've so looked forward to this really in these last few days as I've really been kind of researching you and preparing for this. So I'm excited to dive into your background, your experience with the SEALs, and then all the great stuff that you and Annie have been building and putting out into the world ever since. And obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about your brand new book here, How Leadership Actually Works, which you were telling me has already hit #1 in Amazon in a few categories. So congrats on the success with the launch of the book. But anytime you get somebody of your background and experience, I think it's important to kind of set some context for the conversation. So can we go back in time, when Larry knew he wanted to become a SEAL? And I know that there were some pivotal moments in your childhood that have really kind of set the frame on how you looked at your career in the SEALs. So let's start there and then kind of, go through your journey and story with the SEALs a little bit. And then we'll obviously get into today and what you're doing.
Oh, totally. For me, it started with Tom Cruise and Top Gun in third grade. So I saw Top Gun in movie theaters in third grade, and I still in the theaters, I was 100% set that I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And soon thereafter, found out about the Naval Academy and that all of the best fighter pilots were from the Navy. And so in the middle of third grade, I was just totally dedicated and set on going that route. It wasn't, for me, I grew up in Pittsburgh in the city, and I was a little skinny kid that was not good at any of the normal sports like baseball, football, basketball. I was the only kid to get cut from my middle school basketball team. Like I think it was like third or fourth grade, like everyone that tried out made it except for me. Just not good, which led to a lot of not getting along, bullying with the other kids. I've always just been weird. I've never been a normal person. And I think that really was the foundation of what drove me to want to serve and protect. And then when I found out about the SEALs in seventh grade, that was it. Like I was convinced that's what I needed to do.
Expand on what you mean when you talk about weird, because I know that when some people hear that word, they look at it as a negative thing. They're like, oh, there's something weird, not normal about that individual. And I shared this with my sister over the weekend. Like I have a nephew, incredible athlete. He's 11 years old and he's playing baseball with kids that are 2-3 years in advance, and he's holding his own, but he's got these other things about him too, where I'm like, there's something special, uniquely special. And I used the word weird, and my sister took it as like I was saying something negative about my nephew. And that's not what I meant. I believe all greatness has an element of weird behind it. So when you talk about weird, like how are you kind of framing that? Like, what do you mean?
So I'll talk about this from two aspects. So the first aspect is nothing exceptional was done by someone normal. It's not normal and exceptional are two exclusive circles. They don't intersect. So if you want to do something exceptional in this world, you can't be normal. And if you're doing what normal people do, you will never excel above the norm. And so that concept or that understanding has always led me to revel in my strangeness, my weirdness, my uniqueness, and value those parts of me more than anything else. So that's the one side. I think similar to you and what you were saying is that if you're going to do something big, special, out of the norm, you can't be normal. So that's a good thing. The other side of it is I'm slightly autistic, so I'm in the what they would consider Asperger's. So high functioning. So I'm very, very high functioning on it, but it's a big piece to my background and history. Which the downside to Asperger's is I have trouble connecting with people in a normal way, the way normal people connect, which especially as a kid results in that a lot of times the kids are bullied the worst have some form of autism because they just don't connect with people in a normal way. And so I'd say my strangeness or my weirdness is on two sides. One, I just don't think like normal people, which is very good. And on the other side, there is a bit of an actual challenge when it comes to connection with people.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. It wasn't something I was trying to pry out of you, but it's something that I had known because some of the other members of your team shared with me, which was strange because here you talked about like not connecting with people, and I opened up this conversation saying like how much I felt connected to you. So that's obviously showing like there's maybe not something right about me. How early on were you aware of this weirdness? Like, was it in your youth, and how did that actually play a role in your childhood? Like, because I know you were so set on achieving what you wanted to achieve. So were you aware at the time, and what did that like? How did that play into you staying so hyper focused?
It's interesting when it comes to the actual awareness of having the challenge of the autism. That didn't actually become clear to me until about 6 years ago. When so I have two boys. One is about to be 8, and the other one's 5. And my oldest, Colton, is similar to me. So there's there's a good chance that he got diagnosed on that scale as well. And it was interesting is we were going through that diagnosis process for him. I'm looking at all the things and looking at myself and just like checking the boxes like, oh yeah, there's that. Yep, yep, yep. All of a sudden, out of a list of like 10 things to look for, 8 of them were hardcore traits of mine. That's where I I was suddenly open to the possibility of, oh, maybe I've got this as well. And as soon as I accepted that and started looking at what that means, it made a whole lot of sense. Like all of a sudden, my life made a lot more sense. So that actual kind of diagnosis wasn't clear to me until, I mean, not even 10 years ago, but the experience of it has been part of my whole life, right? From as long as I can remember, it's been, I've always been different than most. And what's interesting is other people that are like that, I connect very quickly and easily to. So it's a matter when I look at my friends, I'd say, half of my really good friends are like me and are not like most other people.
Yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I want to get back to your story here a little bit. So we knew at a very very young age, like we're set on this path. We're going to be a fighter pilot. Then we find out about the Navy Academy that leads us down the path to getting to the SEALs. Talk about your early experience, whether it's in Buds or in the SEALs. Like surprisingly, you talked about you weren't a great athlete, and I think that's going to kind of throw a lot of people off because I think when we think about SEALs, we think of the elite of the elite. Athletic performance, physical capabilities. So were you the oddball, like showing up like not the most athletic person? And then what was the early experience like, whether it was in Buds or in the SEALs?
So my my experience in athletics was different based on the fact that growing up in Pittsburgh in the what would have been the 80s and 90s, unless you're a football player, baseball player, basketball player, you were a dork, right? You weren't athletic. And if it had a baller team, I was useless at it. But I was an exceptional skier by the time I was 4 or 5. I was water skiing, slalom water skiing by the time I was 7 or 8. If it was something weird, I was good at it. Like if I would have grown up a generation later, I would have been an X Games star. Like that was my world. I just was born too early. Uh, and so within that pace, my passion for athletics wasn't in the normal stuff. So I wasn't good at it. When it came to Buds, I was very passionate about that. Like I was very dedicated to becoming a SEAL and worked very hard on it. So I graduated high school. I was also a late bloomer and young for my class. So I didn't grow until between my junior and senior year in high school. So I was 5'3", 107 pounds my freshman, sophomore, junior year. It wasn't until my summer of my junior or senior year, I grew like 8 inches in one summer. And I didn't put on any weight. So I graduated high school at like 6'2", 150 pounds. But, and obviously like being small, being skinny, not very good for normal sports. It wasn't until my sophomore year in college I actually put any weight on, like any muscle and any weight on. But the ability to be successful at Buds isn't about being physically strong. It's about being able to self-regulate. And that self-regulation is mental, physical, and emotional. And that's something I had in spades.
Yeah, one thing I remember you saying from the stage in Nashville was everybody comes into Buds a SEAL, and it's the job of the instructors to I'm not even sure how you frame this, but can you kind of talk about what you meant there?
Yeah. So a lot of people think that SEAL training is to make you a SEAL. And the reality is that you show up to buds as a SEAL already, and the training is merely to get rid of everyone who isn't. Right? There's a difference between thinking that, you bring 10 people into training and that training takes those 10 people and turns them into SEALs. No, they were already everything they needed to be a SEAL. It was just the matter of training to get rid of the 9 guys that can't do it, that don't already have the raw capabilities to do that job. And that core, I guess, skill or capability is all about self-regulation, about being able to regulate mentally, physically, and emotionally. And that ability to regulate, I've come to believe, is one of our greatest determiners of the success that we can produce in our life.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, totally. So self-regulation, I think, comes into 3 forms: mental, physical, and emotional. Physical self-regulation is what we generally think of most of the time we think about self-regulation. Like, I'm going to go do push-ups. I want to do 10 push-ups. I get to the 8th push-ups. My arms are hurting, and I push myself through that pain and do 2 more, right? Physical self-regulation. Another version of physical self-regulation would be, it's cold outside, but I'm able to stay outside and finish a job even though I'm cold. Self-regulation also shows up mentally and emotionally. Mentally would be around focus and attention, being able to stay in a problem longer to find the correct solution. It also comes in emotionally of being able to regulate your emotional state, right? Being able to decide that I'm going to be happy even though it's a stressful environment, as well as to regulate my reaction to other people. If someone comes to me and says something mean, I don't punch them in the face, right? Those different abilities to self-regulate are there in all of us. And we all have different levels of self regulation. As a SEAL, you have to be very high on all of them because not only through training, but through the entire job, you're constantly being tested mentally, physically, and emotionally.
And are these abilities that people can learn to acquire? Can you learn to have better self mental regulation, better emotional regulation, or is it either born with this or not? Because obviously we know there's something different and unique about SEALs. They're harnessing all three of them. Many of them are born with certain capabilities that are going to lead them in the direction. I think obviously that's a great example with you here. So for the people listening, like if they have great physical self-regulation, but they're struggling maybe the emotional state, are there things that we can do to actually acquire some of these skills?
Well, that's actually one of the most interesting things that I discovered. I went into a super deep dive on self regulation based on the fact that one of I don't know, challenges and gifts of the Asperger's is I I get stuck on something, I can't get off of it. It's like I'm a pit bull on a sandwich. Like, I can't let go. I have to figure it out. So on one side, it's good because if something doesn't make sense to me, I'm gonna constantly be looking to figure out how it works. The downside to it is I'll often get stuck on things for a long time. One of the things that bothered me was at the beginning of SEAL training, there were individuals that I would have bet my bottom dollar were going to be there at the end, and there were individuals I didn't think were going to last a week. And at the end of training, there were guys that lasted that shouldn't have, and there were guys that should have been at the end that weren't. And I was completely wrong on a number of cases, and that bothered me. And that's what drove me to try and figure out what is the core driver of success through something like SEALs. And then arguably, if you figure that out, it's going to be applicable to all different areas. And what I found was that self-regulation, mental, physical, and emotional, is controlled in the same 2 parts of the brain. And those parts of the brain work like any other part of the brain. The cerebellum, the back part of your brain, is your hand-eye coordination. So that's like your baseball part of the brain. We know that if we practice baseball, we're going to get better at it, right? We build up neural connections, we refine those neural networks, And through that process of practicing and learning, practicing, gaining experience, we get better and better. Well, self regulation is no different. So the ability to self regulate is a skill, not a trait. It's not something you're born with, like the color of your hair. It's something that you develop over time. Not only do you develop it over time, but every day you're either reinforcing that skill, practicing self regulation, or you're practicing quitting. You're practicing the opposite of it. And so our ability as an individual, not only can we get better at it, but we have to kind of protect our skill or our resources when it comes to using our self regulation. So, very much so, very developable skill. And the cool part is if you're really good at one, see, I'm really good at physical, but I'm no good at mental self regulation. I can't focus. That is merely a need for clearer purpose on something. You have the raw skill for that.
Yeah, I love how you frame everything in kind of a behavioral change like framework, right? Like what I'm hearing, what obviously I'm picking up out of your book, the research that I've done on you, everything is centered around our ability to monitor, control, and change certain behaviors, and that's exactly what I just kind of heard you, and I think that's the world that I live and operate from, and that's why inside of a porn addiction recovery program, I have practices like fasting, like physical development, training programs, because if you can learn some of these physical things, then the emotional, mental side of things, you'll be able to transfer over that. So once again, we're running the same, wavelength here. And I love you're tapping into neuroscience. When did neuroscience really become uh, something that you were interested in and really pursuing? And what role has that played in the work, the leadership, all of these things that you're building and creating?
Uh, Before I answer that question, I want to reinforce what you were just saying when it comes to, because within the audience that you're talking about, or the men that you're helping, I think this is should be a very empowering thing. Wherever you have built up self-regulation, be it mentally, physically, or emotionally, you can transfer that power to other areas. So if you're build it up physically and you want to apply it to emotional or mental, you can. There's two parts to this. The first part is power, and the second part is purpose. So the power is how much power of self-regulation you have, how much have you practiced self-regulation. Now, say, like for me, as a kid that was different, that got picked on a lot, I practiced emotional self-regulation every day because kids would say mean things and I had to learn not to react to them. So I did that my whole life because emotionally, I always felt attacked and therefore I had to regulate emotionally. And when I was growing up, I didn't care about baseball. Also, I wasn't physically, no one would look at me and say, oh, he's really good at physical self-regulation. As soon as I got to buds and my purpose was physical self-regulation, I took the power that I had developed in emotional self-regulation and applied to physical, and I graduated at the top of my class. So that ability to understand that if you build the power of self-regulation and you have a really clear purpose as to where you want to apply it, you can leverage it anywhere. So these men that you're working with, not only is your philosophy of building it on all levels important, like you're dead on with that, but giving them the knowledge that if they look at their life, they do regulate emotionally, they do regulate mentally, they do regulate physically. It's just a matter of having that clear purpose of applying it towards, say, regulating when it comes to the pornography.
Yeah, so let's stay on there. We can circle back to the neuroscience stuff, but I think that this is really good thing to kind of really spend some time on here. So when you talk about purpose, like where are we discovering our purpose? I think sometimes that word gets kind of like lost for a lot of people because they're like thinking like purpose has to be this grandiose thing where I like have to go out there and like try to change the world. And if I don't have that, then I don't have a purpose for my life. But in your language, when you're speaking of purpose, where do we discover and find this purpose?
So I like I'd say my greatest strength is in language. I believe that our language is where all our power comes from. In a human, if we don't have words for something, it doesn't exist in our world. And therefore, I'm very careful and very precise with my language. So something like purpose, which is so important, I'm gonna have a very clear distinction for purpose. So for me, purpose is that which drives a specific end. So simply, any purpose is that which pushes you towards some future thing, right? It's drive. So that helps. Like, it helps us understand that purpose isn't some grandiose thing. We all have purpose all the time, right? There's always something driving you to some end. So trying to think that I have no purpose is bullshit, right? That's not true. You do have a purpose, or you wouldn't be going somewhere. Your purpose might be to stay stuck exactly where you are and not move or change anything out of safety. That's still a purpose, right? So it doesn't, as soon as we get to the reality that purpose is just that which drives a specific end, it's not a big thing. And then it's quite a lot easier to say, well, what's driving me and where am I going? If you don't know what's driving you, look at where you're going. Like, what direction are you headed? That's your purpose. You might not like it. You might not want that to be, but it is, based on the fact that it's moving you in that direction. So I want to pause there, and then we can talk about how do we find it or search. I just interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% in full agreement, and I want to actually throw something back at you and kind of get your thoughts on this. So one of the things that I've really been driving home, I've shot multiple videos, I've written content pieces around this, is to the men that I'm talking to here. Once again, like, I'm going to kind of use you to kind of speak to the men that I'm helping. But I believe this deep to my core. Like, if you're struggling and you're aware that the pornography is having a negative impact on your life, the purpose for your life in this moment is to overcome that. And then once you begin to go down that path, the next level of purpose will reveal itself, because you need to remove this barrier that's in front of you to step into the next phase, into the next phase, into the next phase. I couldn't launch a podcast. I wanted to launch a podcast for like 6 years, but there were always these resistant things. I had to get out of my way first, go down this journey, and then that unlocked the purpose for me for what the podcast started as, which was just a place for me to share my story. So thoughts around there, like, am I driving close to anything that you teach, or am I off at all?
I'd say there's two layers to it. So when it comes to, let's just talk pornography addiction, or being fixated on it, or it's taking up so much time or space in your life. One side of it is having that clear goal or objective of getting past it, is what I heard you saying. Like, we have to get over this. This can't continue to control our life. That would be, for me, a goal or objective. The purpose is different, right? The purpose is the reason why. That's what we need to do.
Yeah. So let me add a little bit more language here, because I do agree with you on how important our words are. So our process of leading these men out of this is to help them become the man that is no longer addicted to porn. And by doing that, you develop certain skill sets, character traits, and belief systems that will now lead you down the path of achieving greater things. So the goal is to overcome it. The purpose in doing that is to become the man that can live without pornography.
Exactly.
Did that kind of help?
Yeah, totally. Okay. Right. So what you're saying in the second part of that is the reason why, like, why we're doing that. The last piece, so this may help, right? The strongest driver for a human being is to produce an emotional state that they want and to avoid an emotional state they don't want. So we talked about what we're doing, a goal or objective is to make sure pornography doesn't have a hold on us. The purpose of that is to become the man that doesn't need that, which gives you a greater position. What they need to identify is, what emotional state does being addicted to pornography produce that they don't want, right? There's that's for all of us might be slightly different, but there's some big ones that are not good. Like, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel that. And then the other side of it is, what do I want to feel? Right? I want to feel what on a daily basis. And as soon as you start seeing that, you can see how clear, like, pornography is never going to have me feel like that. And it is going to have me feel like this. And I don't want to feel like that. So if you look at all three of those, you have the goal or objective, you have the reason why we're fulfilling that goal or objective, and we have the emotional states that we want to produce and not experience, then you've got a complete formula. And that would be a purpose, right? Like, that's a complete holistic purpose that is going to be very easy to not only drive you in the right direction, but have a lot of force behind it.
Yeah, I love that. Love that so much. And I say this all the time here. A big part of having this podcast is selfishly like me reconfirming that what I'm doing and what I'm creating and how I'm helping men is actually the proper way. So your process that you just laid out there, that's weeks 1 and week 2 inside of our coaching curriculum. Week 1, identify all the negative feelings, identify all the things that have held you back, identify all the ways that you haven't unlocked your potential. Week 2, paint a vision for your life without pornography 5 years, 1 year, 4 months into the future that we can use as an aim and a guidepost for every decision and action that we take from this point on. So once again, kind of pat myself on the back here with the work that we're doing and everything.
You deserve it, man.
And that's why
you deserve it.
Why we're having success. But let's stop talking about me. Let's talk about you. Let's get into the book here. So how leadership actually works. What makes Larry Yatch qualified to write the book on leadership?
So from the time I was 19 years old, I've been responsible for another life, right? Like I'm what, 40, I'll be 46 here in a couple of months or so. So it's been a long time, right? A long time that I've been responsible for other human lives. And by the time I was 19, my sophomore year at the Naval Academy, 2 freshmen were my sole responsibility. Everything that they did or didn't do fell on me. By the time the summer of my would have been 19th year, I was in charge of, I had to stand watch where I'm driving a 500-foot Navy vessel in the middle of the ocean at night with thousands of lives on my shoulders. By the time I was graduated the Naval Academy at 22, I then went into SEAL training. After 6 months of SEAL training, go to a SEAL team. By the time I'm 23, I'm responsible for men's lives in some of the world's most dangerous situations and environments. So that my life has always been about leading others to a better future for themselves. And for a third of that time, it was in the world's worst environments, in the highest risk engagements you can be in, where if you made one tiny mistake, someone died. So that, I'd say, becomes the foundation of how I'm qualified to talk about leadership.
Yeah, I know you wanted to do this, from the time you were a boy. Was there ever a point in your career, Larry, when you kind of stepped back and you're like, what did I get myself into? Like, why am I doing this? Like, did you ever have that moment with yourself?
Like, yeah, every day and twice on Sundays. Like, yeah, it was nonstop. I mean, that was a big turning point for me, is I always thought that they were going to figure out that I shouldn't be there, right? Like, they're going to finally like figure out, oh shit, they let this guy in and he's not qualified for doing all this. Courage isn't the lack of fear. It's taking action despite fear, right? I'm more scared than anyone else. I just am much better at taking action despite that fear, which shows up as courage. To me, fear is the greatest gift we could have, is it either keeps us safe or it gives us the direction we need to go in. It gives us the guideposts of where we need to put work and take action despite it. And so being a SEAL doesn't get you out of being scared, questioning your ability, questioning your skills. All it does is make it so that you continue to take action despite whatever is going on around you.
So what did the SEALs training or your time spent there or your own foundation principles that you developed? Because what I'm hearing you is you had to grow courage, you had to grow confidence. So what did you acquire through your career that have enabled you to continually have this courage, have this confidence to step into and lean into those fears?
I'd say, ultimately it comes back to what we started this on, which was self-regulation, right? Like being able to, it just continued to build into the same platform, right? They are all intertwined. Being able to regulate my emotions when there was fear, being able to regulate my myself or my physical self, right? The pain and suffering that I have to put myself through, the ability to stay focused in challenging environments. Those things all just reinforce that same ability to continue to perform despite the harsh environments. The other core tenet that I stuck by that has helped, I'd say, serve me the best is I always approach everything as if I'm wrong. And the more that I think I know something, the more I question what I know. If I disagree with someone, I make the assumption that they're right and I'm wrong, and I'm going to ask why until they either prove that they're right or it validates my position. That concept of starting with I'm wrong has been huge, because then I'm not stuck in it. It allows me to continuously grow.
Is that a common trait within the SEALs? Because I'm thinking of, I've known a handful of SEALs. I've had the pleasure to train with them in the gym a couple times. Like nowhere near what you guys actually do. Like I'm a bodybuilder meathead. Like I like doing bicep curls and squats. But I think when people think about SEALs, like obviously we know you guys are the lead, the elitist of physical abilities, the elitist of mental abilities. I mean, so you're at the top, 0.5% of human beings in the world, and I think a lot of them walk around. I don't know if it's cockiness. Obviously, there's an element of confidence. Is what you're sharing, this humility component, is that a common trait within the SEALs?
So it's a weird dichotomy, because on one side you have confidence, and that confidence is a required trait, meaning I know that if it's humanly possible, I can do it. I'm often wrong, right? Like, but I know, like, if you're like, oh, we're going to go do this. And if I know that you can do it, then I think I can. And often I can't. But there's just this ingrained thought that if it's humanly possible, I can do it. And I'm probably going to do it better than most. That just is a knowledge. And I think that comes from the confidence of doing it. One of my fellow SEALs, a guy that I really respect, what he said is, we're not an expert at anything, but we're experts at becoming experts. Like we're experts at getting good stuff. We're never the best, but we're the best at getting good at stuff. Like you take any SEAL, put them in a class, it could be basket weaving, they're going to be in the top 2 or 3. Like it's just this ability to learn. So on one side of it, you have that confidence that's been hard earned. On the other side of it, they beat ego out of you. Like, because ego will kill. I mean, it's going to kill you. It's going to kill someone you care about. If I know something, I'm not going to be able to learn. And if I'm not going to be able to learn, I'm going to end up being less effective. So there's this weird side of, you'll see the confidence, but in the same respect, the ego that hurts you as a human being is gone. Like that has to, like you could take SEAL and tell them they did something wrong. It's interesting. You take a normal person, you tell them you did something wrong, they usually fight with you. And that's ego, right? Doing it. Take a SEAL, you tell them they're doing something wrong. They're like, okay, tell me how I did it wrong. You prove it to them and this is how I do it better. They take it on board right away. And that enables the skill to then feed the confidence. So the confidence is there based on skill. The skill is there because there's no ego.
Love that. Love that so much. Get back to the book, How Leadership Actually Works. So the title is coming from the place that the current leadership model is broken, backwards. Okay.
I'd say backwards. Like not only broken, but backwards. One of the biggest eye-opening experiences that I had, and one of the reasons I've been out of the SEAL since 2008. Like it's been a long time. I've been out of the SEALs longer than I was in it. I just wrote a book now based on the fact that I wanted to get a strong foundation in business in the civilian world and not just bring my experiences from the SEALs. Most of the books that you read from SEALs, they're talking solely about the SEAL experience, and you have to try and apply it into the regular world, which is often very entertaining and it can be very useful, but it's never direct. The lessons in that book come from the 12 years of working with businesses outside of the SEALs, using the foundation of the SEALs as a base to build upon. So one of the huge lessons that I learned is how the SEAL community looks at leadership and management is completely backwards to how businesses do it. And that's where I've come up with this concept that it's just 180 degrees out. And that distinction is what enabled us to operate at such a higher level than the average business.
Yeah. So can you set the context then for the typical view of leadership in, the business community, and then how your model, how the SEAL model is flipping that on its head and is actually the proper way?
Yeah. What I love about this is we've distilled these things down to the fundamental principles. So you may not own a business. It doesn't matter. You're on a team. Right? The teams are the most important thing in a human's life. We can't survive on this planet alone. So every person out there listening, this is applicable to you. You don't have to be a business owner for this to make sense. you can, and I think I'll apply it or use the example as a family as opposed to a business. You probably apply to more people, but it works the same way. So in the traditional concept, let's just start with three things: leaders, managers, and followers, right? Every team, you have a leader, a manager, and a follower. Those roles have to be filled, even if there's just two people, and they're different roles, right? The traditional understanding is that the goal is to be the visionary leader out in the front, inspiring everyone to take action, while the managers and followers have to be there to kind of get stuff done, right? So in a family, you could look at it as like, I'm the dad that kind of tells, this is all where we're going to go, but it's really up to my wife and my kids to get all stuff done, right? The wife kind of manages and organizes the whole family, and my kids kind of do what they're told, right? That would be a traditional understanding. In a business, the CEO is up in the front, visionary leader, telling everyone what to do, what's going to happen. And then you've got these managers that are stuck there and they're necessary and no one wants to be and the followers doing it. In the SEAL community, I was backwards. So as an officer, I had the highest rank, right? So I was the most senior person by rank. Yet I often had the least experience based on my SEALs have been doing this for years and years and years. So they have more knowledge, more experience, more strength, more confidence in all the things that we're doing. If I was the visionary leader, just telling them what we're doing, follow me into battle, we would all die, right? I didn't, especially as an officer right out of BUD/S, like I didn't know anything. So even though I was the most senior person, I was the least qualified to lead the team. So my job was to manage the team and build leaders all around me. So I had to create the world where every one of my SEALs was not only knew how, they had all the resources to, and they had all the confidence to lead, to take action, lead the rest of the group in the most effective thing. And if someone else saw a better way, they became the leader instantaneously. So my job was to create leaders everywhere and follow. Now, in that model, we have infinite power, right? In the model where I'm the leader and you all have to follow, it's dependent on my skill. That's it. That's as far as we go. So if I change this back over to business or family, my job as a father is not to lead my family. It's to build leaders in my wife and my sons and follow them, right? My job is to create leadership, enable them, and support them in doing it. Odds are your wife knows what's going on with the family more than you do, right? Your job is to support her in leading the family. Your job is to create confidence and leadership in your children so they make the right choices without you. In that model, we're turning upside down, right? Manager is not leading. A manager is creating leadership and following their leaders. Does that flip-flop make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. So, obviously when you were talking about kind of the split business model, like my brain went to EOS. Like I'm very familiar with traction. I don't know if you are as well. You have the visionary and then you have, the operator. And I think leadership has always been looked at, like you said, it's like you got to create this big vision and then get the people to do the work. So the typical model of leadership is you got to have a big visionary. In your model, what is that anchor skill set or that anchor character trait that makes a good leader or manager that is actually going to be able to execute this model?
So understanding the core role is important. The core role of a manager is to create, enable, and support leaders. The core role of a leader is to evoke effective action in a follower. The core role of a follower is to take effective action, right? So followers are the most important part. They have to be taking effective action on a regular basis. A leader's job is to evoke action in another. Followers and leaders are basically the same thing, right? We go back and forth between leading and following all the time, right? In this interview, you've led and I followed, and then I've led and you followed, and we've just switched right back and forth. So only when you have a position, a title like father or like CEO, do you actually have to manage, And in managing, my job is to now make it so that everyone can evoke action in each other and take action effectively. So when you go to the EOS level, what often happens is a visionary gives up all management responsibility to the integrator, and that doesn't work. It because all that visionary does is create problems. And so they're abdicating or getting rid of their management responsibilities because they think they don't have any, and that doesn't work. So the integrator and visionary both need to manage. They need to be able to create, enable, and support leadership around them. And they need to follow. They need to follow each other, and they need to follow their leaders within the organization.
Yeah, I want to zero in and ask you a hyper specific question on the family dynamic here with something that you just said, how the followers are really the most important in this model. And something like the SEALs, obviously the followers are kind of being weeded out. So when you get them, you're getting the best of the best, right? That's kind of what you talked about, Buds, is like it's getting rid of the ones that aren't made for it. In a company, like the hiring manager or the CEO or somebody there has the ability to select the followers. In a family, though, you don't have that component, right? Like your children are your children. Like you can't just kick them out and be like, okay, I'm gonna replace Johnny with Steve because Steve's gonna be a better follower for me. But knowing that the follower and the family dynamic is the most important here. And I think speaking to our audience that is gonna actually have something that they can maybe take away from today's interview and actually apply in their life. How can you begin to manage or lead followers if they're not up to the level that you need them to be at to get them there, so this model actually will effectively work?
You talked about Johnny and Steve, right? We're kicking Johnny off. Little Johnny gets kicked off. We're taking Steve from another family and bring him in because he's higher functioning, right?
Yeah.
Let's just refer to the functional level of Johnny versus the functional level of Stevie, right? Functional level comes to two things: the size of the commitments we make and our consistency in holding them. Right? The reason we want to kick Johnny off the team is he doesn't make big commitments, or he makes commitments and doesn't hold them. Steve, if he says he's going to do something, he does it. So we want Steve on our team. So your job as a father is to create an environment where your lead followers, your family, are able to make commitments and hold them. And that takes time, right? You have to teach them how to hold responsibility. This goes right back to what we started with, self-regulation. How well are you holding responsibility? How many of the commitments that you make are you holding? Right? That's why I think what you do with men is so important and so powerful, and why it will 100% affect all other areas of their life. Because what you're having them do is make commitments to themselves and hold them, which is going to translate into higher functionality, the better ability to hold responsibility, and therefore to be a better model for their family in doing the same.
How consistent is the themes in your book or your frameworks with Jocko's work? So extreme ownership. I know you're probably familiar. I don't know if you've read the book, but what I just heard you say is like right out of Jocko, right? Like if your family isn't producing the outcome that you want as a father, it's not because your wife is falling short. It's not because your kids are falling short. It all comes back to the leader. And then from there, you can begin to dissect and figure out where do you need to begin to implement some change. So how consistent is with those themes and what Jocko is sharing?
So we have, I think they're super complementary, right? They're two different things. Jocko and Leif. So Leif Babin is Jocko's co-author and partner. Leif and I met my first day at the Naval Academy. We were in the same company together. We've known each other all through the academy. And then he actually took over. So he was in charge of Charlie Platoon, which was my old platoon at SEAL Team 3. So like very, similar time. I was just a bit before. What their focus is individual leadership. So their focus is how can you as an individual lead those around you better, right? That's their core piece. What you get in this book and what we focus on is how to lead others. Like there is a difference. Right? On one side of it, you have to, they think of it like a foundation. What they teach is the foundation so that you can lead well individually. But then how do I build leaders outside of that? That's a whole different game. And that's what we're talking about. For me, that foundation of individual leadership is there. Now, how do I get my department heads? How do I get the leaders within my company to do it? How do I get my sons to do it? That dynamic of group leadership is slightly different. That's why they complement each other so well. You won't see anything that competes. Language might be slightly different, but you'll see the ability to expand the foundation of what they give to a much broader basis with what we're teaching.
Got it. Yeah, and I just thought that was an important thing. I'm a big fan of Jocko's. Obviously, it's a book that we've talked about a lot here. It's a part of our curriculum as a recommended read because I do believe in the principles. And I believe that the work that we're doing, like you shared, it is opening up these other areas. But it's only going to come from the place when you begin to take responsibility for you're the one that's gotten you into this position. So no, I really appreciate you sharing that. I wanted to see if you would share a story from your time in the SEALs, and I have one specifically. I'm hoping you remember talking about it at the event, but I believe it was opening night of Iraqi Freedom. Obviously, you mentioned that you were the leader of SEAL Team 3. Can you kind of share with us that story? And I believe you said at one point you and your team were the most important people in the world. So share that if you don't mind, and why that was such a pivotal, part of your career and really for the world that we're living in today.
Yeah, I wasn't the commander of the whole team. I never got that senior. I was the head of my unit, my platoon, within what was a much larger team. So the opening night of Operation Iraqi Freedom was all about securing Iraq's oil infrastructure. So Iraq they get all of their income off of oil, and all their oil fields come to a manifolded metering station, so this big complex. Then it gets to two pump houses on the beach, and then those pump houses pump oil 12 miles out to two oil platforms. And those oil platforms are the largest oil platforms in the world. 4 super tankers can fuel at one at a time. They're over 13 football fields long, 3 football fields wide, 12-foot diameter pipes of oil go out to them over 12 miles. Huge. And Saddam had promised to blow them up if there's any hostilities. So we had to secure all of that before we did anything else, or else he would have blown up the platforms. If he blew up the platforms, it would have been the largest environmental disaster ever seen. It would have denied use of the entire Northern Arabian Gulf for ships, and it would have taken the ability for the countries in that region to get fresh water from desalination. So massive problems. And that this literally the start of the war depended on us being successful on this mission. And my particular part of that mission was to secure the one functional oil platform that existed. So that was the most dangerous part of it, because that was the part that if he blew that up, we're in serious trouble. So like I say, to kind of put it in layman's terms, my job was to go have a gunfight on the world's largest gas station that was rigged with explosives.
It's crazy. Well, I don't think I said this at the beginning, but thank you for everything that you've done. I want to talk about now your transition, because you mentioned that you spent more time now out of the SEALs than you were in. You and Annie have built multiple successful businesses. Obviously, what you're doing now with SEAL Team Leaders is incredible. What was the transition like? Like, did you know during the SEALs that entrepreneurship was going to be the next path for you? And how did that kind of transition play out?
I didn't choose to stop being a SEAL. I got injured. I got injured a number of times. Eventually, I had a bad back injury, but I chose to continue operating for almost 2 years, with what was a very damaged back. Eventually, I lost use of my right leg and ended up in a hospital in a wheelchair. The surgeon that fixed my back nicked the L4, L5 nerve root, and I lost 3/4 of the feeling in my right leg, which ended my SEAL career. Altogether, I've had 14 surgeries. I think it was 5 of which in the SEALs and the rest post to get put back together again. As you saw, at the event, no one would look at me and know that I had 14 surgeries. They said I wouldn't walk without a cane, and to me, that's purely a illustration of self-regulation. I have massive chronic pain every day. I shouldn't be able to do the things I do. I just choose to do it because I don't want to be limited. So that I was laying in the hospital with a surgeon that just left and said that my SEAL career is over. And all I'd ever wanted to do my whole life was be a SEAL. Like that was it. There's no backup plans. I didn't really expect to live past 30. Once 9/11 happened, I was convinced that like there's no way I'm getting out of this alive, not in what I'm doing. And I was good with that. Like that was okay. And so I'm laying there in the hospital with no idea what to do. And my journey to entrepreneurship was all about freedom. I became a SEAL ultimately really to fight for our freedom of that comes with being in the United States. And and now that I couldn't do that, I really wanted freedom for myself, right? Freedom to make my own choices and the freedom to make the impact on the world that I've always wanted to. And so it's more a functional decision, like a real logical decision than it was this passion. I never really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just saw it as the way that I could create the most freedom in my life and in the lives of others.
Yeah, that's great. Let's circle back to neuroscience because I asked you about it here, and then we went on a completely different path there. Um, you know, I forget where I heard this, but I do believe it to be true. Like life in this game of life is nothing more than a game of neurochemicals, right? When you learn to pull some of these certain levers, like you can really set yourself up to win and succeed. So, how do you kind of process what I just shared there, and what role has kind of understanding neuroscience played in your life and your entrepreneurship and your leadership and everything that you're doing?
I'd say twofold. So there's neuroscience and neurochemistry. Uh, Neuroscience has been what I got into as soon as I was out of SEALs was training, right? We've just built and run a series of different training companies, and training companies are another word for training is behavior change. And in order to really understand behavior change, you have to understand neuroscience. And all leadership is influencing the behaviors of another. So all leadership is neuroscience as well. The more you know about neuroscience, the more you can change behavior, the better leader you can be. So I'd say that was the foundation of my interest in neuroscience, and I went really deep on it, really understanding the different aspects that control human behavior, which allows me to then teach others what to do. Neurochemistry on the other side has been a challenging place for me because the Navy really screwed me up on neurochemistry. They overprescribed massive drugs, everything from opiates to antidepressants, anti-seizure drugs to try and deal with the pain that the neurological pain I had. That and the post-traumatic stress, right, from going through a whole lot of traumatic experiences made for very damaged neurochemistry that I suffered from for 10 plus years. And over the last 6 years, I've been fighting really hard to get back to being whole and healthy. And one of the biggest steps in my healing was not only understanding, but being able to start to influence my neurochemistry with everything from trauma work to therapy, counseling, meditation, physical strength conditioning, working with different organizations to help regulate naturally my neurochemistry. There's a company called Biome Tech that we've been working with. It I think is by far the best at helping influence neurochemistry on a natural basis.
Mm. Biochem,
Biome, like biome, human biome,
biome.
Biome Tech. Yeah, they figured out how to influence the bacteria in the gut, which is the foundation of all neurochemicals in our body.
Yeah, no, Annie was actually sharing that with me. She's supposed to be, and I'll bring this up to her when we talk in a couple of weeks. She's supposed to be connecting me with somebody over there. So thank you for reminding me of that. Do you have a spiritual practice, or how do you look at spirituality in
So
your life?
yeah, so I was born and raised Catholic, and Catholic school from second grade all the way through high school, which I'd say hurt my spiritual life more than it helped. And then my time through the military and the SEALs, I kind of just put all that on hold. In that the thought that there was a there was something out there that was controlling my fate outside of my hands was too scary in the environments that I was working in. And I found that SEALs either took kind of my path of like, nope, there's nothing, just me, or a hardcore faith where, yep, it's all God and I'm good. Kind of one or the other. You weren't in the middle. And so that was my life up until about 2 or 3 years ago, and it's really been through my healing process that I've gotten much more strongly connected to God and to um, spirituality, to the connection, everything's greater than ourselves. And I've really come to believe that it's only through our traumas that we really truly get to have the opportunity to know God and know what is true for us in our lives, and to be able to bring that truth into others as well. And that's where I've really turned the corner, and seeing all the challenges and traumas I've been through is really been the greatest gifts of my life, as opposed to the worst parts of my life.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's just something kind of that was more kind of like personal for me. So I've just gotten to know you, over these last couple of weeks and studying, and then really today. So, Larry, I appreciate so much for your time here, for you just answering all these crazy weird questions that I throw at you. I know we kind of went all over the place, but I want to obviously drive
Oh, I love
people.
it,
I want
man.
to drive people to your book and connect more with you. So, where can they pick the book up? What are you most excited about right now? What is SEAL Team Leaders working on? Is there anything up and coming that you're excited to be putting out into the world? And then we'll bring today home with our last question, like we'll end every single episode with.
Yeah, the book has been a huge thing. We've been so purposeful in everything from the writing of it to our launching of it. I'm just so excited to. We've seen what humongous changes we have in people's lives when we get to work with them. And I see the books as an opportunity to get this amazing information to more people. And the thing that I'm really the most excited about is we've decided to open up a group coaching program where we're going to do like unbelievable. The amount of value we're putting into it's insane. Based on the fact that our lowest price product for a company is 10 grand a month, and it just limits who we can impact. But the content we have is so impactful that we wanted to create an opportunity to bring that level of service, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for company to individuals. So we're going to start that. It really was at the event with you that we were like, oh, we saw the power of it. So I'd say that's the thing I'm most excited about, because we're going to be able to reach people that could never afford to get our services. But we're taking, like, myself, our COO, Annie, our top people, to put content in every month. It's going to be killer. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, and this is going to be for entrepreneurs, business owners, for the for the everyday individual that just wants to continue to level up. Or who is this? Who is this?
To look at it from, on one side, we'll always have some business side to it. Part of the reason we're doing, normally in these calls, you got one person doing the calls. We're going to have six. And so half of our company is based on business performance. The other half is based on individual performance, and they go together, right? As you increase the performance of the business, the performance of the individual has to rise. So we're going to be hitting it from both sides. So if you have a business, yeah, it's huge. If you're just looking to improve your ability to coordinate action with those around you, your family, your spouse, your kids, or your business, either as an employee or as an owner, it's going to be good for you. So yeah, both sides of it, individual and teams.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. And so excited for you guys to be putting out. And for the audience, like we have Larry here today. We have his business partner, Annie, coming on in a couple of weeks. I spent a lot of time with Nick in Nashville, really connected with him, super sharp. I mean, just business mind, operational, all these amazing things. So if you're looking for a group or something to be part of, obviously we have our coaching is dedicated to helping one type of man, but it looks like what you guys are creating is really open up to everybody. So when that's out, guys, let us know, and we'll obviously drive people your way. So pick up the book on Amazon. Is there anywhere else where people can connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, and are you hanging out anywhere socially? I don't know you have a huge social platform, but where can people connect more with Larry specifically if they want to?
We have the Facebook groups, I think, are the best places to go on that. The How Leadership Actually Works, the websites, go there, because that's going to be where we're putting the most attention to keeping everything updated. So you can go there and get any information about the book or the groups or anything else we're doing. Website's always going to be the best place to check that stuff out.
Got it. Awesome. So last question here, Larry. We end every single episode with this. Obviously, the title of the show is The Superhuman Life. And for me, when I talk about living a superhuman life, it's really a belief system or a way that I try to show up every single day and operate in the world. And it's coming from the place, I'm a man of faith, Larry, so I do believe that we're all put on this earth for a purpose. But knowing that you're here for a purpose isn't enough. Like you would just be a human being standing here not doing anything. You have to be intentional in your approach. You have to be intentional in the action that you take in developing your mind, body, and spirit so you can actually create this purpose and give it to the world. So that's how I describe living a superhuman life. I like to end every single episode here with getting the guest take. So, Mr. Larry Yatch, how would you define living a superhuman life?
I believe that we're a physical manifestation of God's love on this planet at this point in time. And I believe just by the nature of that being true, we are all superhuman.
It's beautiful, man. I wish we would have spent more time on that.
I'll come back. This is way too much fun. Just do it once.
Yeah, let's make that happen. Like for real, very soon. Because I'd love to explore that. There were some things that Annie and I talked about. We'll follow it up with Annie because there were a couple of things that I questioned her about from her talk on the topic of surrender and kind of your framework and philosophy on there. She said you have an amazing thing to tell. So I think we're gonna have another pretty amazing conversation. But I know today was powerful. So thank you so much, Larry. Guys, get out there and pick up the book, How Leadership Actually Works. You don't need to be a CEO. You don't need to be a SEAL. You don't need to be leading large teams. If you're a human being walking this earth, like Larry said today, you are part of teams and you need to understand the dynamics of those teams, how they work, and what your role is. So whether you're the leader, the manager, the follower within that, this book is going to help you understand some of these core principles and frameworks. So Larry, so thank you so much, guys. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. But most importantly, guys, we share this with you every single week. We've seen tremendous growth over these last couple of months with this show, about a 10 to 15% month over month growth. And it's all because of you. It's because you're getting value, because you're sharing these conversations with others. So if today's conversation resonated with you, but you know there's somebody in your life that needs to hear this, do us the favor and do them the blessing of sharing today's talk with them. But for Larry Yatch, of Navy SEAL team leaders, Frank Rich at the Superhuman Life, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.